So if she wanted to rap that, then she could have. If she wanted to dance that, she could. If she wanted to produce that, she could, because hip hop allows for you to express and address in whatever way you see fit. So for all the liberated souls and the ones in the back, welcome to our second lesson, our second class. Class is in session. I am Dev, formerly known as Devin Malik Anglin. Funny story, Cam. There was a time in my life where educators only knew me as Malik because my dad had this like concept in his mind that my name was Malik and not Devin, because there was like in odds, right? And class, follow me for a second, because my identity, and we're talking about hip hop today, and it's all about knowledge of self. One of the elements of hip hop. But there was a moment in time, my first 6 years of primary education, where educators and friends only knew me as Malik because of my dad. And then once I transitioned to high school, and my dad, then he was down in Atlanta, living his best life, I then turned into Devin. So my dad's side calls me Malik. My mom's side calls me Devin. There is a group of people who know me as Malik. So when they hear Devin, they like, who is that? And then there is a group of people who know me as Devin. And they then but they also know who Malik is as well, because I live in fully all of my identities. So
where did Malik come from? That was just his preference?
Middle name. And he chose that middle name.
I know that. I'm just saying, like, was there a reason why he was drawn more to Malik versus Devin?
Because it is Arabic. That's what he chose. And fun fact, he wanted my first name to be your last name.
You told me that before. Yeah.
So my mom said, absolutely not. You are crazy. And that will not be his name. Choose a different name. So then it came to Devin being the first name, and then settling with Malik. Like, that was acceptable in my mom's eyes. So that's why he was just maybe the sternness of my personality comes from him. But,
you're embracing the sternness now.
I know I'm stern. That's why I get results out here. Okay.
I don't want no smoke. No smoke. This is the first time I've heard you accept it openly. So that's good.
There's a first for everything. Don't get used to it. It's going to be another couple months before I accept anything else. Okay.
Got the date and time marked. So
it's good. But we are classes in session. We're here. Cam, how you feeling? How was your week going? What's up?
Hey, I'm Cam, and I unfortunately don't have elaborate story like Dev does about the origin of my name. But I guess I can say I'm formerly known as Killer Cam, since we're talking about hip hop. That's kind of low key, depending on what circle I'm in or who I'm talking to. I guess a nickname that still follows me decades later. But back in the day, when I was in high school, when everyone first started calling me that, Cameron, Dipset was definitely at the height of their career, and just everybody was listening to them. So, yeah, that's me. I'm good, though. I've had a great week. It's definitely been positive and productive, and I've been looking forward to today's conversation because I know we're going to unpack a lot. So,
yeah, and, to that point, we're, like we've said, this show is based in study and practices that are already live in the world, right? The realities of, different youth development spaces, education spaces, etc. And I think Cam like a lot of reading because I was producing the show, and then Cam also kind of like yelled at me because I didn't put, the notes. I didn't put the notes in our lesson plan, and she didn't have any direction. She of course during class she ain't gonna show y'all what she said to me. But she got me right. She got me, so it's never gonna happen again. And I felt like, transparency is how we build community around here. So I thought that I should just tell y'all that because Cam got me right before we even hit record. So
y'all, he is not gonna villainize me and make me the bad guy right now. I did not get on him. We just had a conversation about how we can better prepare for upcoming episodes. To all the Black women out there that's listening, I know that y'all can relate. We are not used to following. We are used to being in control. We like to know what to expect around every corner, every turn. So with me being the novice in this project, I've been following Dev's lead. He's been such a great leader and bringing me up to speed. And so I just had to remind him and let him know, I know you're going to get us to the destination. I trust you. I'm letting you be in the driver's seat right now, but I just need just some hints, just some,
just some hints.
Just give me an idea of where the rest stops are, where we stopping at, just so I know if we going northwest, south, northwest. I just need to know what direction we're going in. I'll still gladly follow, but you just got to give me some reassurance along the way. That's it. That's all. Not too much to ask for, right, y'all? I know y'all feel me, chat.
Yeah, I get it. Y'all see how she did that? She put me in my place again. Oh, just real nice and eloquently, you know what I'm saying? Because I didn't say, I'm not out here to call or tell black women that they, aggressively doing things or anything like that, because that's not what we do around here.
Right.
So she very eloquently said, "Don't let it happen again." So when we giving y'all homework to come back to community, and then we talk and engage, whether it's on the Patreon or in our LinkedIn space or in our LinkedIn space or whatever the case, maybe even in a Discord. Maybe we will create a Discord so we can all be community and family together. I'm going to let Cam tell y'all not to let that happen again because she just does it so eloquently, so graciously. She leads with grace all the time.
I try.
Hey. So last class, we left off with a hip hop drop to where I kind of introduced you all to hip hop education, but by way of the cipher and how I've taken the cipher model, the psychology of the cipher, and then shifted it to how I then lead my own professional developments in my work. And that kind of naturally flows into this lesson around hip hop as pedagogy and the healing space that it provides. And part of why the lesson plan wasn't filled out was because Cam can attest to this. It was a lot of information that we went through, that we skimmed through, that we reviewed on top of all of the other things that we're doing throughout the week. And there's so many different pathways that we can go in this conversation. And what I explained to Cam was like, hip hop culture is a structured free form of engagement. So like there's a lot of structure in there that's embedded, but you're free to kind of explore it as you connect to it. So it was really hard for me to really create a linear lesson in order to really capture where this conversation goes. And that's by design. I did say, and I did promise, pinky promise at that every other lesson that I am producing, or I am told that I am producing, because Cam did tell me that I'm producing this, and you got to listen to your co-teacher. Yes,
this 100%. Is your topic. This is your thing. It only made sense.
Right, and I did produce it. It's just in my brain. It's in my brain, and I got to make sure that I put it down. So
the brain that we can't read.
Right. You hear that, women? A brain that you can't read.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Communication is key.
Communication is key. 100%. And I did not communicate the linear process of this very structured, free-form topic that we're going to have, or conversation we're going to have today. But you are going to flow because I believe in you. I believe in my Black women. And unless you don't identify as Black, I believe in you. So with that in mind, our hip hop drop this week is actually from a Black woman. Oh man, you see how I do that? The love for my Black women. It's just
trying to get brownie points.
It's just oozing, right? It's oozing. So the hip hop drop is from our sister, Lene. How do you say her? She is the I'm butchering her name. Lene is her first name. Her last name, or the last name on her at name, is like Vinay. Vinay, Vinay,
The
something like that.
influencer.
But the influencer who does the parking lot
I love her.
talks, and she graduated from Spelman and all that stuff.
Mhm.
So I was trying to look for this one thing because she does spoken word, which it makes sense, right? But I think this was a really good hip hop drop to start the conversation off with, because this is hip hop. Like, this is hip hop. This is hip hop culture. How she delivers her content is hip hop as pedagogy. And I wanted to share this with the class as we start this conversation. So here it goes.
The revolution just might have to take place between these guys. The better off we'll all be the sooner you realize that these guys comprise the secrets to the universe that passes by every time you decide, I'm not feeling her, and you don't gotta like me, baby. I know I'm a little crazy. Neurotic as the best of us, that make ways for the rest of us. Because you can't change the world without a little psychosis. Can't fight disease from within without a little osmosis. But we ain't talking about my state of mind. We talking about the state of times when you not feeling me means you think you at the 5 and dime. It means evaluation. It means disrespect. It means humiliation. It means keeping me in check. Sometimes it means violence. I'm talking trans women too. Lesbians, any of them that just don't want you. You in the West End hollering revolution do. Peddling bean pies, whole time revolution waiting on you. And when it materialized through these thighs without your help. Remember that you did that. And you did that all by yourself. And you can step to me, wish death on me, because I won't concede. That's many men. I gave you the benefit of the doubt. Doubt outweighed the benefit.
Okay, face agony.
Awesome.
Okay.
Clear. That
with
is
that last
hip-hop
line,
pedagogy. Oh my goodness.
She ate.
How that make you feel, Cam? Like, when you was engaging with that content, when you was listening, when you was watching, how did that make you feel?
I like how she was able to do the play on words. Obviously, that was the whole point of doing like spoken word. But the last line is what resonated the most with me, and I feel like I'm about to butcher it right now. But she said, "What was it? The benefit of the doubt? Like, you just outweighed the benefit." I thought that was really dope.
She was just rapping, for real. Like, the same mechanics and the same techniques and everything, that is rapping. It's just, it's in the spoken word form, right? So in the wordplay, the hyperbole, the entendres, and all of the different things that go into crafting the rhythm, rhyming that goes into crafting that piece, it felt hip hop. Even though it's poetry, right? But hip hop is poetry. So many different elements that go into it. So again, that structured free form, like, the structure is how she wrote it, right? She's writing in a specific structure to where you want to say certain things, where you want to say it, your punchlines, your literary elements, all of those different things. But she's free to express how she feels and all that stuff in whatever way she sees fit. So if she wanted to rap that, then she could have. If she wanted to dance that, she could. If she wanted to produce that, she could, because hip hop allows for you to express and address in whatever way you see fit. So I thought that was a good hip hop drop, because I didn't know she did that. She performed in that nature, but I've always seen her as the parking lot queen, right? Keep it black, but she's gonna keep it brief.
Keep
Is
it
that
brief.
her? Like, those skills comes from that, because I'm pretty sure she was doing poetry and spoken word well before she started to do her parking lot content. And I'm also pretty certain that her ability to speak publicly and so eloquently as she does, and we know her to do, comes from her connectedness to words, which is tied to hip hop culture and how we study words and how we communicate and kind of articulate how we feel through the use of literary elements and the flow and design of words and communication. So that was our hip hop drop. And as we go into the conversation, we read and we engage with a lot of content leading up to this show. Again, if you want to read any of the resources that we kind of base our conversations on, just check description. These are all free resources. I've read a lot of this content over time. And the idea and concept of all of this is just to, one, bring light to a lot of the work that we already do in our businesses, but then also make sure y'all are put onto game in terms of how you engage your client base, your students, your kids, your community, so on and so forth, because we are all about liberation, empowerment, and all that good stuff. So I think I want to start again with another video to ground what hip hop has the ability to be to a young person. Christopher Emdin is one of the hip hop educators that put me on to game. The summer of 2017, I was going into my full-time job, and there was a professional development happening at East High School in Rochester, New York. And he was one of the presenters, and he presented his work through how he facilitates his work. And hip hop education is pedagogy. Hip hop as pedagogy is the method to which he teaches. And it resonated with me right away, obviously. And I went into a deep dive. I followed him. At one point, I asked him to be my mentor on Twitter, and he was like, absolutely, but it just never happened. Because it didn't happen. It did not never happen. Wow, that's not right. And my mom is in the back of my head, like, say it right. Because she's a writer.
Down.
But it didn't happen not because of him or because of him. It didn't happen because I was like literally just tweeting and adding him. And then he ended up responding, was like, yeah, anytime, just let me know. But at that point, I was so new to whatever this is, to where I didn't even really understand what I was asking to be mentored in, or even how could he help. Christopher Emdin, if you're listening, I'll take you up on that now. Because I'm in that space to where, like, I will go to Columbia. Well, I need to find some money, but I will go to Columbia to then be like taught by you in this hip hop space. So this video is an example of what hip hop has the ability to do when we allow for it to be present in the youth development space. And when I say youth, I mean youth all the way up to 24 in college as well.
It's a dope question. Like, so if someone is to say what the primary catalyst is, I will admit in saying that for a lot of times in my schooling experiences, I didn't know, right? So my aspirations growing up were to be a rapper. Like that was when I was in middle school, high school, that's what I wanted to do. And I never saw that there were other possibilities beyond that. And I literally stumbled into recognizing my academic intelligence by accident. Like literally I was in a class with this woman when I was an undergrad, and she was like, why don't you come research in my lab? And I was like, I don't want to go to your lab. Like, who wants to hang out in the lab? And she was like, if you come to my lab, you'll get extra credit. So I actually went to the lab because I already knew in my head I was going to fail. And like, I knew I was going to need extra credit before. So my motivation for even going to do science in the lab was feeling as if I didn't have the intelligence. And so when I got there and actually started doing science, like literally engaging, I started realizing like, yo, actual science is very different than school science. Like I started understanding that in K through 12, they teach you how to memorize. But when you go into higher education and actually doing stuff, they ask you to think, reflect, apply, connect, work in groups. And I'm like, yo, I never got this when I was in school. And so when I started actually doing this stuff and realizing the gifts that I had, I started rediscovering that I was intelligent. And I was like, yo, if an album drops on Tuesday, I know all the lyrics by Thursday. And no one told me in school that I was intelligent, but I had an amazing memory because I used to write rhymes and memorize rhymes when I had to battle. So now when I was applying it in other settings, I started realizing that there's inherent genius just by function of being hip hop and being from the hood. Like when you talk about like the Bronx and people's perceptions of the Bronx, what people don't recognize is any phenomenon that is framed as inherently negative also means that it is developing skills in you that can be applied positively. So in any instance, somebody who has poverty is just automatically more creative. When you go across the world, you go to Ghana, you go to South Africa, kids who have no bread, they make the most cool toys because all they have is like the little things they have in front of them. So you look at them like, oh, those poor kids, but in reality, their poverty is actually activating their creativity. So Bronx is the same way. Like if you ain't got no heat in your apartment and your mom's has to find a way to close a certain window and heat up the oven, that's a scientist because she's figuring out ways to use the circumstances to allow her family to be comfortable.
We can read more. I mean, we can listen to more, but I think that is a very, very, very good foundation to what hip hop as pedagogy is. So what I'm gonna ask you, Cam, is when you listen to Christopher Emdin talk about his reality of what he was as a youth in college. And then that then leading him to down a path of like rediscovering his brilliance, his intellectual capital. What are you getting out of that? And do you see, and then the second part to that is, do you see hip hop as one of the reasons why he was able to rediscover his intellectual capital through going to that lab?
I think it's super dope in that clip or just that interview where he talked about how he just automatically kind of wrote himself off and just assumed that in that class he was going to fail. So the driving force behind him even going to the lab was to try to do damage control. But the whole time that, like you just said, helped him discover a new level of brilliance that he never even realized that he could tap into. And hip hop is for sure the catalyst behind that, because it allowed him to understand his superpowers more and just what differentiated him between like his peers. Because just the example that he gave about the album dropping on Tuesday and then by Thursday, he know all the lyrics. Like, that's impressive. Like, now, granted, it may not necessarily be linked to, like a class, whatever the case may be, but that doesn't take away from the skill set that it takes in order to be able to retain information that is like so much information in a short amount of time. So I loved how he correlated that. And I felt like through his example and his story, that should allow us as a society to humanize youth more and not necessarily be so quick to judge or to label if they do represent or gravitate towards hip hop culture, because there's so much innovation there. Like, there's just still so much talent that goes into that world. And another part of that interview that you didn't play, and viewers, y'all can check that out when y'all look at this resource on your own, was the reference that he made to his book. Was it called Ratchetdemic? Is that the name of it?
Ratchetdemic. Yep, I got it right over there.
Ratchetdemic. Yeah, that was in my notes and definitely like made my heart sing, because when he like brought up the book, he talked about like basically how there's the duality between like the two worlds, where kids feel like they have to choose between, the urban side or being ratchet versus being, academic, and thinking that they have to like, make the hood part small in order to be like socially accepted. And that's something that I know me personally throughout my adolescent years and even a little bit of adulthood, that I had to learn how to embrace that more and not shy away from all the different sides of me. And even like to this day, we just recently had a conversation, actually, Dev, I don't know if you remember. I think you were like mocking me or you did some little voice or something. And I was like, I don't sound like that. I was like, you make me sound ratchet. And you was like, well, technically, you said yourself you ratchet. And I'm like,
yeah.
A little bit, yeah, okay, but still, I don't sound like that, because I feel like you coming for me. But like, that just reminded me of that conversation, because I'm like, I agree with him. There is power, and as an adult, being able to realize that you can merge those two worlds, you can be both things at the same time, and that not limit your potential. But it's even more so important for our youth to be a part of these conversations and to hear these messages sooner, so that way they don't feel like they have to subscribe to the code switching and having to like make parts of themselves small to appease the masses. So
you hit everything on the head. Every nail head that was sticking up, you just hit it flat. And I think that is, so one of the things about hip hop as pedagogy and just the culture in general is it is so embedded in how we interact with each other, like everybody, how we interact with each other, that if we don't use the culture as the grounding mechanism to connect with one another, then we lose the opportunity to really birth what Christopher Emdin was just talking about in that clip. And again, we've had a lot of conversations, like even when we was in pre-production and we was choosing what lessons will go in this season, hip hop pedagogy wasn't on there at first. And Cam, as Cam does, what you gonna, hip hop is your thing. Why is that not a topic to talk about because that's your thing. That's what you do. That's what you always talk about it. And I explained to Cam, like, because hip hop is integrated in everything that we're talking about. So there's not really a way to talk about hip hop as pedagogy because it's already embedded in what we do. But Cam was like, nah, you still got to like talk about it because this is like that. You know that, but everybody else might not know that. And that's also, again, why creating this like linear conversation about hip hop, it was so hard to do because it's so the way that I internalize the culture is what Christopher Emdin just explained. Like, you can't capture what he said. Like, you can't capture the idea of a kid feeling like they're not intelligent, but they're doing one of the most intelligent hobbies that you can find, which is playing with words and trying to contort the words in the way that somebody else is moving to them and they feel it, right? The same way as Lene and how she contorted those words for a minute. And a minute is a long time when you're talking about rap, right? Like, to contort those words to a beat to make somebody feel something, that is hard. That takes a lot of intellect. That takes a lot of discipline. And the way that I've always thought of hip hop is beyond like the classroom, is beyond the literary element piece of it, is beyond the science part that they were talking about and Christopher Emdin really attaches to it. It's really like the human part of all of this that we do. It's reminding everyone that when I engage you as a person, hip hop is present. Because when we put on our clothes every day and when we talk the way that we talk every day, that is all informed by the music that we listen to. That is informed by the people who we hold near and dear to us or the music icons that we consistently study. Chris said it in that talk around, an album comes out Wednesday, by Friday I know all the lyrics. That is language that you are embedding into your ecosystem to which you then use if you feel like it's cool. Hip hop culture is a youth driven genre. Whereas, Lil Wayne was 14 years old when he started. Jay-Z was, I think, 18, 19 when he became mainstream and Reasonable Doubt came out, but he was younger before he was Jay-Z, right? So youth is always driving what hip hop is on the music art form. But I've always said that hip hop was birthed the first UGC market. So whatever was cool, artist was wearing it. The Kango hat, first person you think of, LL Cool J, right? Adidas, who do you think of? Run DMC, right? So like part of where hip hop as pedagogy comes into is like the idea that the way that our urban areas are shaped is based off of how those communities interact with one another. So when we're talking about AAVE, Ebonics, all of those things is baked into the experience of hip hop culture. The reason why Shaqs, you couldn't wear Shaqs in the early 2000s was because of hip hop culture. That wasn't cool. You ain't see your favorite artists wearing Shaqs, right? You seen them wearing the Air Force Ones, Jordans, all that stuff, right? The connection to hip hop is a $10 billion connection. And I don't remember which article. Oh, I think it was the Hip Hop Pedagogy as Literary Praxis. It says that in this $10 billion industry, 80% of that $10 billion is coming from the white population, which makes sense because, it's more of them than it is of us. And they control a majority of the money in this country. And they control the majority of hip hop in this country because of the industry, right? So there's no way that you can say that white students are not affected, and white communities for the most part are not affected by the effects of hip hop. And that's where, like, when we're getting into the nooks and crannies of hip hop as pedagogy, me leveraging the teachings and the psychology of hip hop, it fits every demographic across any community. Because even in the most rural community, even in the most rural community, they're trying to connect to hip hop by way of purchase. That's why 80% of that $10 billion industry is coming from the white demographic, because if they can't be close to it, they're going to buy it. They're going to buy into it in some way, shape, or form, right? Wu-Tang is probably one of the best examples of that, because you will see a random white person wearing a Wu-Tang shirt. You will see a random university using the Wu-Tang copyright, because that's how Wu-Tang built their empire, in a sense. Wu-Tang was one of the first. That's one of the most recognized hip hop symbols or logos of all time. And that transcends across all genres. So when we say hip hop as pedagogy, we have to understand that no matter where you come from, you are connected to hip hop in some way, shape, or form. And I think in this past beef with Drake and Kendrick and the Super Bowl really showed that, where you had white households in rural parts of this country where baby boomers and Gen X parents didn't know who Kendrick was, but their sons and daughters were explaining everything that was going on. And then when they engaged with Kendrick and all of his music, they started to like it, right? They started to engage it because they now were introduced to something that has already been around. It was just distant from them. But once it went to the main stage and they were able to engage with the music, they too had a connection, a connectedness to the art form. So when we're talking about hip hop as pedagogy, we're talking about the intangibles, and we're talking about the things that you can't necessarily mark down, which why like the resources that we watched, and even in Chris Emdin's work, it's very like when he was talking about the scientific method, the way that he delivered it was in a hip hop, in a hip hop tone, in a hip hop verbiage, in a hip hop delivery. The cadence was hip hop because he delivered it as if he was an MC. Well, he is an MC, but he delivered it as if he was an MC. So now for that random person I am a product of this that I'm talking about, but that random person in the audience, when he delivers it that way, now science feels cool, because the person that just delivered it didn't say like, what is your hypothesis and what is this, right? It's more so like, yeah, when you telling me to analyze my thoughts, and when I analyze my thoughts, he hitting like, oh, wait a second, I want to analyze something too. Give me a what is it, a microscope? I want to analyze something. I want you to teach me how to do it, because I'm gonna get that in the process of learning a new skill. And I couldn't help but think about, or even want to experience, how a lecture, I've seen some videos, but a lecture is lectured by Chris, because you can feel his connectedness to hip hop just from how he speaks. So as we are engaging with this content, I challenge everybody who's listening to really think about what your connectedness to the culture is, and how could you leverage it in spaces to where you're engaging with your kids, whether it's your biological kids or your adopted kids or the kids that adopted you, or your students who didn't adopt you, but they still your students, all of the different variations of kids. But then also with your friends, right? Because we don't engage with our friends in a very like dull way, right? In a very Eurocentric way, because we're not, if you're black, you ain't Euro, right? You might have some Euro in your blood, but you ain't Euro, right? And I think that's where hip hop pedagogy, it strives, because it plays on the reality that hip hop was birthed by youth who just wanted to have a good time and distract themselves from the reality of their communities in 1974, in the Sedgwick projects in the Boogie Down Bronx. And one of the last things that I'll say before I yield to you, Cam, and your contributions to the conversation is, when I was reading the hip hop pedagogy as literary praxis on the second page, he said something. Akim said something. Akam. I want to make sure I say this man's name right because I'm not butchering nobody else's name. Yeah,
Akam. It was
Akam.
but
Akam.
Mm-hmm.
Akom for the people listening. He said something that really resonated with me to the point where I said, and then I highlighted it.
What you say again, Jim?
I said, ooh. And then I had to highlight it. And I am a serial highlighter if it resonate with me well. Mm-hmm. So what he said, I'm gonna start from here because he also said something about the cipher. He said, in much of the literature, hip hop is depicted as something occurring outside of school after dark or in distinctive social. Oh wait, I skipped the whole line. In much of the literature, hip hop is depicted as something occurring outside of school, something that takes place on the block, BLOC, in the street, in the hood, in the club, shout out to 50, after school, after dark, and in distinctive social spaces set aside for play. Indeed, the hip hop aesthetic in the world of education, whether it be fashion or a cipher, is often associated with the realm of leisure and anti-intellectualism. Crazy. What I am suggesting, however, is that hip hop, for those of us from the hip hop generation or post hip hop generation, has had a significant presence in the classroom, particularly during the 1990s and into the 21st century, when a remarkable thing happened. Aspects of youth culture in general and aspects of white and Asian youth culture in particular underwent Black reincarnation via the hip hop aesthetic. That last part. Aspects of youth culture in general and aspects of white and Asian youth culture in particular underwent a Black reincarnation via the hip hop aesthetic. Ooh, that make me feel all woozy inside because, that goes into this idea of cultural appropriation. And when I think about that, I think about what's the Asian girl name that speaks Black? I mean, she's a
comedian,
actor, a comedian. Yeah, she's a comedian.
Aquafina.
I think about that, right? Where she is living in a hip hop reality, but she's not hip hop. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can see the difference, right? Or she's living in a reality to which she has attached herself to because she's found an identity in that. And hip hop is always in knowledge of self. What we always challenge is what you're presenting to us authentic to you and your community, right? Hip hop lives everywhere, right? The Koreans love hip hop. South Koreans love hip hop. K-pop is literally 90s hip hop right now. Like, our 90s flow is literally K-pop. When 90s, you had the groups, the boy bands, the girl bands. You had this like succinct way of producing art. The Koreans are doing that now.
Choreography and all of that. Mm-hmm.
So when I read that, part of that is like, this is acknowledging that white and Asian youth live within the culture, and their Black reincarnation is through the aesthetic of hip hop, how we dress, how we walk, how we talk, how we engage with one another. And they see that as cool. So then they co-opt it. What we challenge is that co-opting authentic to how you came up and the people who you're around, or are you one of those, my best friend is Black?
Cosplaying.
Mm-hmm. So part of what hip hop as pedagogy is it's anchored not only in the creative elements of hip hop, but it's also anchored in knowledge of self, fashion, and the language of hip hop, and that's built around hip hop. That's why when Kendrick did his thing with GNX and put the whole West on his back and all of that stuff. Just really East Coast versus West Coast, that was more of a language thing, right? We do things this way. Now we do things this way. And there is regional language differences and understandings. And we all know if we moved from one state to another state, we have to learn the language again. Like, we all speak English, but drilling and joning is two different things. I didn't know what joning was when I went to Atlanta in 2007.
Oh,
I didn't know what joning was because we didn't jone. We drilled. It's the same thing, but regionally.
Or flaming. Flaming is a thing.
Yeah, flaming. What did I say? What did I say to you?
Roasting.
Roasting is also another one. What did I say to you when I was in Rockford a couple months ago? Glazing. You don't even know what glazing is, and
that was just a me thing, though. But like,
it's connected to the region, right? And who other people
everybody
are connected
else seemed to know around here, so that's why I said it was just
maybe you wasn't around the culture enough.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, right. Okay.
I'm just playing.
You tried it.
I'm just playing. But yeah, I think so. Okay, so my connectedness, and I'm interested to hear. No, I've been talking a lot. I'm interested to hear based off of kind of what we've been talking about and what you've been hearing around the foundations of hip hop as pedagogy. How have you leveraged hip hop as pedagogy as you've engaged your staff in the past, your kids currently, by any dreams necessary in its creation? How are you leveraging hip hop as pedagogy to really sell your services as a unique offering?
I mean, you already said it earlier, so I'm just going to repeat it. It's literally embedded in like every single thing that I do, and to the point to where like I've heard you reference this before this conversation in this episode before too, and I thought I understood and agreed, but after like reading these resources and just trying to prepare for this, trying to be better prepared for this conversation, I'm like, oh wow, like let me find out I was already practicing hip hop pedagogy before I even knew what it was and knew that it was a thing. And so like it's just little things that I do that I've retraced my mind. And I'm like, oh, that was hip hop pedagogy. That was hip hop pedagogy. Like, for example, I did a icebreaker with one of my teen leadership programs a few years back. And I always open with the icebreaker to like just liven the group up. I do a check-in first just to read the room and see how everybody's feeling, to gauge if I should move forward with what I planned or not. And then from there, the icebreaker is always bringing in, the fun element whenever I'm working with teens. And so for this particular meeting, I don't know what inspired me to do it, but I was like, okay, y'all, like we're going to do a freestyle, like activity where like you have like 2 minutes tops where you talk about like yourself and like your goals, your aspirations, like whatever the case may be. And I had an instrumental. Well, I had like 3 instrumentals that I had them like choose from, and that was their beat that they like rapped to. And so I did 1, 2. And at first, like they're like, oh, I'm not doing that. And I'm like, no, you are, because like we're going to switch it up instead of just doing it boring and just talking. Like, let's just, show where our creativity takes us. So like by the end of the activity, like we was all in a cipher, like low key, high key, hyping each other up, feeling more connected to each other, like cheering each other on. Like it was literally hip hop pedagogy. Or like when I facilitate, I'm really big on using instrumentals just to break up the silence, just to, create the vibe, to just be background music. Like whenever there's like an interactive part that I bring forth, like with that conversation. So, that's hip hop. My language is definitely deeply rooted like in the culture. Like I'm big on slang. Like I'm very intellectual. Obviously, I know what I'm talking about, but also, like I said earlier, I have another side of me that I embrace and that I bring in all the spaces that I'm in and the work that I do. And I feel like that's helped me make lasting connections and resonate with the communities that I've served and just have success by just being myself. And so yeah, not only have I done that in programming or just like in trainings, but even just how I represent myself throughout my professional like career, there's just always elements of like hip hop culture, from the music to my word verbiage. I'm very intentional with that. And it's always well received because again, that's just kind of it's what drives our society, our world. Like everybody resonates with these same references. Everybody wants to feel cool. Everybody wants to keep up with like the latest popular term, whatever's trending. So it's in everything that I do.
That is the beauty when you can start to identify that this thing that is, I mean, it's been studied, I think, as early as 94. I want to say, like, I've seen some of the references or the reference back to other earlier works being referenced or connected back to like at least 94. I know Gloria Ladson-Billings' culturally relevant pedagogy she wrote that or coined that back in the 90s. I think that was 94, 95. And she is also a hip hop educator where she's used in her PhD teaching hip hop as a way to communicate competency to all of the things that she is engaging with in her classes. But I'm glad to hear that like when you was reading, it kind of stuck in terms of like, yeah, there is no like what hip hop as pedagogy is, because you just got to see how you align. Wearing Ups or Jordans or Timbs, all of this, the staple shoes into program is if you know how to align that with your kids, that is hip hop as pedagogy. And I always tell my white practitioners, listen, wear your favorite pair of Ups or Kobe's, or wear a pair of Timbs, Butters, and go into your program with your Black and brown youth and authentically engage with how they respond to seeing you in shoes that they have an emotional connection to.
Yeah, they gonna clock it instantly through the gate. As soon as you hit the door, they gonna clock it.
Yep. And as long as you authentically engage with them, and I would say play into their expertise in that area and tie them things as tight as you can and let them show you how to really wear it. That is hip hop as pedagogy, right? Because now what happens is you're building connection by just simply engaging with how to wear or lace a shoe correctly. And if you don't know how to lace a shoe, best believe somebody's talking about you. Somebody's talking about you. Like that is true. That is real. If you don't know how to lace a shoe and you tie them things tight, somebody is laughing at you and pointing like, yeah.
What are those?
Yeah, what are those? And them things are struggling. Oh, them things are struggling. It's a community of practice. And I apologize, Bettina Love, because I think I called you Bonita Applebottom last show.
Applebum.
Applebottom. Listen, I called you the wrong name. It's Bettina L. Love. Bettina. And if I didn't say Bonita and I actually said Bettina last show, then I apologize for apologizing for butchering your name when I really didn't. But I want to cover all things because hip hop is identity, and I want to make sure when I am referencing your work, I'm referencing your work, and I'm referencing the right person, because there is a Bonita Love out there somewhere, but she didn't write. She didn't forward Cultivating Genius, or she didn't write this brilliant piece about hip-hop based education. But Bettina wrote that she connected hip-hop as a community of practice. And I think that's exactly what it is. When we are in the cypher and we're vibing, we are creating a community of practice. In my 9-to-5 work, I've communicated as that being a community of practice as we are engaging, trying to bring more boys into our organization, right? Or into that organization. And I want to read something that if y'all can see, I like all this highlighting, and I did this in 2020. This is when I read it. It was like mind blowing, right? But Bettina, she wrote, it's so interesting because she wrote, I will never forget the day when I was teaching in front of the class and a student in the hallway yelled out that a car was driving by with spinning rims. Hip hop.
Spinners.
Because we knew T.I. in the South with those spinners. Oh man, crazy. Classic. I remember seeing spinners. I'm like, oh, them is fire.
Magical.
Right. And because of that hip hop connection, right? Almost all the students in my class walked out to see the car. I was left standing in front of the room with no words to grab their attention. Now, let me pause. Hip hop as pedagogy. At that moment, if you are a traditional educator, everybody is going down. Everybody's in trouble. That's the utmost disrespect. But because of Bettina's connectedness to understanding what those spinners meant to those youth at this time, I don't know what year she's referencing, but it had to be mid 2000s because spinning rims was like popping mid,
like 2003, 2005.
yeah, 2003 to 2006 was like when it was popping. So her understanding of that allowed for that not to weigh as heavy as she's teaching and facilitating the classroom. So she goes on to say, thus, my classroom was filled with emotional, visual, linguistic, and creative expression of the African diaspora, improvisation, call and response, and communal learning. By no doing of my own, I simply provided space and content. And she explains that space and content is providing the space for her students in this, as hip hop based education, space to her students to engage and connect, while also guiding them in that space with content that resonates with them. So that spinner, that car with spinning rims, which, first of all, did they catch to see the car? Because if it was riding past and somebody yelled in the classroom, "Yo, it's a car with spinning rims passing the school," and everybody left, I would assume that by the time they got to the door, the car was long gone.
Unless they pulled up to the front of the school to come pick somebody up. And it was like a parking lot, you know what I'm saying? So yeah. I'm getting a visual. I can see how this could have happened. So
yeah, it's very, very intriguing to think about how that potentially had played out.
How it went down.
But providing them space to feel and engage in that with that content allowed for her to really kind of guide them through that. And there's another point in this article that I didn't find yet, where she tells a story about like when they were having a cipher, because they would do like ciphers throughout the day. And she talks about like guided participation, where when they have the intent to participate, you allow for within hip hop, you allow for them to participate as they show up, and then you guide them through that process. So if you see harm happen, because you got to take hip hop with the good, the bad, and the ugly. So misogyny, especially during this time, misogyny was big, video vixens, all of that stuff. So it's less about correcting them and it's more about guiding them through what their reality of engagement is at that time. Bettina does a really good job in kind of showing and expressing what that is and what that looks like in the classroom setting. And for those of you listening and engaging with class today, if you are not someone who's in the classroom, the same rules apply. I wasn't in the classroom and I had so much power as if I was in the classroom. And a lot of the times you have a lot more flexibility outside of the classroom. If you are a youth practitioner who runs programming, youth development programming, and you're not in the classroom, the way that you create and craft your space is very intentional and should be very intentional in how your youth show up. Matter of fact, Cam, you got a story about that. You know, you remember a time where I came and I did like some guest speaking with your kids, and there was a situation where you had a white individual facilitating or even just recording some.
Yeah, they weren't facilitating.
Yeah.
They were just in the room.
Just engaging in the space that you cultivated with your staff. And can you tell, you know what I'm talking about? Okay.
I remember vividly.
Can you tell that story on like what happened in the context of what we were just talking about?
Sure. So what the scenario was, it was basically the tail end of a program that I had curated that was specifically for Black and Brown young men, middle school and high school age. And it was a workforce development program as well. And so during this activity, basically, they were this week, the week that was the last week of the program, and so that's why Devin and some other male leaders came to engage with the young men and to just talk about why representation is so important for them to be in leadership roles, and just speaking to their experiences and just being representatives for them of what they could achieve if they wanted to, if they chose to. So anyway, they were actually having, I think, some downtime, and they were supposed to be working on presentations that they had to present, which was the big culminating event for the program. It was going to be for the public to learn and see what these young men had been doing for the 6 weeks they were in the program. And as they were working on their projects, just being in community with each other, they're having conversations, and somewhere along the lines, I think they started roasting each other or just were having banter going back and forth. And I believe they started cussing in the midst of like having the conversation. So the white leader that was in the room that that Devin referenced was very caught off guard, I guess, being a fly on the wall and just seeing how these young men language was. And unfortunately, he blew it up to be a much bigger issue than what it really was. I think the root of the concern was, okay, these kids were using inappropriate language. It seemed kind of aggressive. I think they were roasting, so he wanted to make sure it wasn't any bullying. Okay, whatever. I'm not going to get into the weeds of how kids interact with each other, let alone Black kids. So if he would have left it just at that level, then I think it wouldn't have been as problematic. But unfortunately, what he chose to do was then go and escalate it up to like the C-suite leadership of the organization. And I think even HR was one of the people that he had a bigger conversation with. And I was just so appalled at the audacity of him to come into their space and just completely like disregard like their culture, their rapport, just make all of these inaccurate assumptions about how they feel about each other and their engagement. And you were literally just here for just 2 seconds. Or before that incident, anytime he would come in, he was a videographer. So you're literally just taking little snips of this and that, maybe do a little interview here and there, and then you right on to the next thing. So yeah, it was just disheartening to see. And he was younger too, which made it kind of surprising, because it's like just any adult like in their early 20s, you would think would have some type of knowledge about how teens engage because you're not that far removed. But yeah, that was a situation. And so I think that how it ties into what you just mentioned from Bettina's article was just basically like a disregard for like the culture, but also for that community of practice. And it was just very unfortunate because it could have been a teachable moment for him. He could have started with me, first of all, the leader that curated the program in the space, to gain a better understanding instead of just being assumptive and going over my head. And then again, just making inaccurate allegations about what was going on. If he would have just started with a simple conversation with me, I would have been able to educate him on, what the norm is and what was problematic versus what wasn't, and could have helped with facilitating a follow-up conversation. So that way it could have also been a teachable moment for the young men, but that never happened. He never approached me, never had a conversation with me. And I purposely did not bring up the incident to him afterwards, because I just wanted to see like, okay, like you've created this issue. How committed are you to trying to find a solution? Because if you were, again, you would have come to the source, which did not happen.
So he didn't provide the space and content for them to exist in their own space. He tried to control the space and the content that was in that space, right? And there was no guided participation in there. He was just a onlooker, right? He's a newcomer to the space, but no intent. He had no intent to participate in that space. He just wanted to observe that space. And when he felt jaded or offended by that space, he went and told. So that is also the complete opposite of hip hop as pedagogy, because hip hop as pedagogy helps guide that space in a way that informs but also reaffirms. And that in that particular situation, he went to the principal's office to say, yeah, you need to shut that down because there's a bunch of hoodlums down there. I'm paraphrasing, but that's probably what he was thinking for real, for real.
Yeah.
We're going to finish the hip hop pedagogy out by me reading again Bettina Love, because out of all of these articles, this is my favorite article. I'm just saying. And it's funny because it's around what the communal learning of hip hop does. So he says, Wilson understands hip hop to be a tool for reflecting on the past to make connections with the present centered on African traditions. She views hip hop culture as a network of generations tied together by ethnic origin, spiritual orientations, geographic tendencies, regional, what we was talking about earlier, right? Kinship norms, all skin folk ain't kinfolk, and several other community-oriented practices, including artistic expressions, communal traditions, philosophies, social values, and imposed social order. Thus, hip-hop at its core is a space of communal learning, which influences children's social, emotional, educational, physical, and creative skills from birth. I'm about to say that because even the example that you just gave, those are all kids engaging in ways that they have learned and been socialized to engage with one another from the content that they watch, but then also the communities to which they are a part of. And we've seen someone come from outside of the community into this space that was curated by people of the same community, and then went to then snitch, if you will, on how the community practices and the social norms of this space was happening because it wasn't appropriate to the standards of his community that he's coming from. And I just wanted to say that because, again, that is another reference of how hip hop as pedagogy is baked in and embedded in everything that we've learned from birth. And the biggest thing about hip hop and using it as a pedagogy is to identify to what commitment do you have to the culture, and how do you bring it into the spaces that you walk into every day, and how does that inform your own identity? And with that, the last thing I'll say to round that story off is it's funny because on the wall, I think it was on the wall, and correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they create their own expectations and rules or something on the wall? It was next to the door or something like that?
There were some rules that were posted that the leadership staff, the team director, had posted in that room. But then also, I think on the dry erase board, there were some shared agreements too, if I'm not mistaken.
And the only reason why I remember that is because part of my thing and the way that I've curated my spaces and the programs that I've led is if the kids say they don't want it, then it ain't happening. So, and I said that from the beginning. And part of how I've always run my programs is to make sure that my kids' voice are the loudest in the room and the loudest in the building. So when I don't put rules up because rules are meant to be broken. And that is something that we are socialized to believe. So why would I then govern my program by rules that we all tell each other, including adults, that they're made to be broken? And then when I express this, I go in the staff setting, because the people were well, you don't do rules. I'm like, yeah. And I got an example. Who broke the speed limit today? Raise your hand. And everybody raised their hand. So why? That is a known rule. It is a law. Laws are rules that people break every single day. I go 12 over the speed limit all the time. All the time. I hope not to get caught.
I was going to say, not you criminalizing yourself.
Listen, you can't come after me because I went over the speed limit. All right. In the school zone, I don't go over the speed limit though. I don't play with kids. On the highway, ain't no promises.
I actually just got a ticket for allegedly speeding in a school zone. I was
allegedly?
Allegedly. And I'm fighting it. And I'm going to court on December 3rd to put it to rest because I'm not paying that. But anyway.
Oh, yeah, because they try to tax because it's in the school zone too.
Thank you. No, I'm not going.
Yeah. Fight that.
I ain't got it.
Fight
I ain't got it.
I'll write a letter. Just let me know if I need to write a letter, because I put some words to the paper real quick.
Here's my character witness right here.
Cam don't speed. No.
He's all the way across the country, but he can speak to my character. He wasn't in a car, but he knows.
Yeah, I know Cam wasn't speeding. Cam don't play with kids. So you telling me that she playing with kids?
Period.
No.
That's gonna be my argument.
I'm here with you. But yeah, so I would tell them, like, I don't do rules, I do expectations. And the expectations that go up on the wall are expectations that are co-created by everybody in the program. And the beauty of that is, on those expectations, one of them is I be snitching. So don't do nothing that you don't want me to tell your parents. And that sets the perimeter. Understand, everything is free game in here. I'm not telling you not to do nothing. But just know, if I got to snitch, I will snitch. But I'm also using language from hip hop in order to communicate that. So what happened was, they didn't do anything that they didn't want their parents to know. And if they did, was getting in trouble. It's so funny because they would be like, well, I'm going to get in trouble because Devin be snitching. But it lays the foundation, and a lot of my expectations was more centered around, like, everybody has a place here, everybody's identity will be respected here, and everybody agreed to that. And you would think, when a new kid came into program, that they had been in program for 10 years, because we had non-binary kids in program, and we had weird kids in program and all types of stuff, but everybody loved on everybody the same way. And that is that community of practice. That is that communal teaching of what hip hop as pedagogy brings into space, that we just heard from the great Bettina Love from this article. What is hip hop based education doing in nice fields such as early education and elementary education? Early childhood and elementary education. So I hope y'all felt like y'all got something of value out of today's topic. And I would challenge you all, as for homework, to go back and really identify, where are you positioned in hip hop culture? How do you partake in hip hop culture every day? And then how can you apply that at work, at school, with your kids? And continuing to continue to be on the journey of defining yourself. An example of mine in my disruption is, I have Nipsey Hussle quoted on my professional work signature, as well as Kobe Bryant. And it's so funny because I have a known gang member quoted on my, really everything that I do. And until they tell me to take it down, it's going to always be there, because the quote is, the highest human act is to inspire. And you can't tell me that because he was a gang member, we can't pass those words along. So that's how I continue to bring hip hop into the spaces that I take up, amongst other things. But we'll talk about how I really kind of apply hip hop later on in the season, because we're going to really get into one of my frameworks that Cam is going to smile about this because she told me to do it, that I will be presenting in really world premiering at South by Southwest EDU. I applied, put it in, and it's so funny because me and Cam kind of applied together, and I was actually presenting at Cam's Teen Summit when I was supposed to be promoting the session, and Cam started promoting the session. And then I told Cam that she got me situated because I wasn't promoting my session. And then I promoted my session, and it was chosen. I don't know how, because I don't know how many people like really voted for or whatever, but
it's between it was supposed
voting,
to be selected.
The voting, and then like there's a couple review processes that it went through, and it ended up getting selected. So this will be my world premiere of my hip hop culture framework that I created it in 2020, and I've cultivated and perfected it over time. And the world premiere will be at one of the largest education conferences in the country, and most renowned conferences in the country across multiple disciplines and attractions. So,
period.
Yeah.
Start calling you Professor Dev.
I mean, listen, I would love to be a professor. I just gotta,
you
get there.
are in a non-traditional way.
100%. Because I be
Be teaching.
I'll be teaching. I'll be teaching. I'll be teaching.
And do.
And will. And is.
I think this is a good segue for recess for sure. We talked about in our very first episode, like recess being an opportunity for us to bring in fun components or just off-topic things. But I think for this one, I definitely want to stay on topic with us just talking about education. And with this being very relevant right now on social media, I just couldn't let this go by without us commenting on it and just starting a bigger conversation about how we can remedy this particular issue. And so I think it's a bit exaggerated, but I think that there are still some presence that exists in different communities where we need to do a better job at having a stronger village approach to raising our young people and holding them accountable. So what I'm speaking about is recently here in the Midwest where I'm from, in Chicago, an incident that was recorded, went viral on social media that involved a young mother and two of her children. And unsure, I've been trying to get confirmation. It appears that she may be with child. I'm not 100% sure, but if she was, it makes the situation even more gut-wrenching than it already is. But basically, they were walking home from school, and a group of youth that ranged from elementary and middle school were basically harassing the mother and her kids. And it looked like the mom potentially tried to say something to some of the kids because there had been a history of bullying, I believe maybe with one of her children. And so the kids didn't like the fact that she was trying to check them or that she even attempted the audacity for her to try to, say something to them or defend her children. And so as they're following them, as they're walking, it's probably like at least 20 kids, if not more, and they're like taunting her. And so it just started, it progressively got worse, the interaction. And so like they're telling the mom, like, basically like, don't say nothing to my brother or don't say nothing to my friend. Don't say nothing to the kids who are causing issues with bullying her kids. And then they started to like get in her personal space. And so the mother she did much better than me. I'm going to just go on record and say that. She kept her composure and did not put her hands on the kids, but I think she either kind of pushed a little bit or like braced them from running up on her kids. And before you know it, the kids got physical with her. And so it's basically, it looks like the middle school students that were a part of the crowd basically fought this woman like she stole something. And it resulted in all of them having to get hospitalized, the mother and her children. And so, yeah, it's just been, I really hate to see it being circulated in the way that it is, because while it does need to be awareness, it needs to be a bigger conversation, just seeing that is just heartbreaking, because this should not be anybody's reality and it should not be normalized. But there has been like some celebrities, or I think even the Chicago School District, if I'm not mistaken, have gotten contact with the mother and given her resources, because just everybody feels so horrible about what happened. But yeah, it's been think pieces that have popped up left and right, and people giving their 2 cents about what they would have done or what's right, what's wrong. And for me, I see both sides of the spectrum, where it's like, I think that there needs to be a bigger conversation about the parenting that the kids are experiencing. I think that's kind of a reflection of their parents' presence or the accountability that they are not holding them to in the home, that makes him think that it's acceptable to, show up like that. But then on the flip side, I think that also beyond that, like, there needs to be just more just how come these kids wasn't in no after school program? Or how come they wasn't, like, why are they out here on the streets kicking it? You know what I'm saying? Like, how come there's nothing more productive for them to be doing? So that's where I think that it's a community issue, where we all can be doing more to try to redirect them and to help them with making better decisions. And like, the parents have even popped up on social media with the kids and doing like these. It's really cringy, like having the kids fake apologize, but then they're giving disclaimers and putting it out there like, but in the comments, don't do too much because this is still a child. And it's like, wait, huh? Excuse me? Like, it's crazy to me. It's crazy. Like, how do we get here as a community? Like, how do we get to this point?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it makes me sick to my stomach.
Yeah, I seen that. And it's so funny because funny as in like ironic, because I was sending you another video in response to that to say like, yeah, this is something also that I've seen, which was a kid attacking, quote unquote, and a teacher in a school. I don't know where it is. It's not in Chicago. And the teacher swung back and busted his lip. And I think he gave him a concussion, I want to say, too.
He told that kid.
Yeah, the kid was told.
He couldn't even open his eye. Like, he couldn't even hold his head up. His head was on his mama's shoulder the whole time on the interview.
Yep. And me, again, and it's the same concept. I don't blame the kids. I blame the adults. Right? Because similar to what we were just talking about around hip hop, as pedagogy, we have to take the good, the bad, the ugly. So when we are being socialized in this culture, the culture is also based in the reality of highly impoverished neighborhoods that's dealing with things that are beyond their control. Hip hop was birthed because DJ Kool Herc wanted to provide a distraction to the reality of what the environment of the Bronx was in the 70s. It says it in one of the liberatory praxis article, where
it's also in the one that was by Adjapong.
He talks about it too. Yep.
It talks about the history of hip hop in there. Yeah.
So like with that comes fighting, and it comes aggression, and it comes all of these different things, right? We learn social cues on, what bullying is or could be or is now, right? And what I always say is like the amount of neglect and the amount of antagonizing that you have to do to a kid to get them to that point is on the adult. Now, in terms of your example with the mom and walking away, because I've seen some of it, but I don't like to put that energy in my energy.
Yeah, it's bad.
That's not as direct as something happening in the school building, because that's happening on the outside of the school building. But those kids are seen as not being able to engage with in the school building. So they go out of the school building, they do the same thing. But also, to your point, which I didn't even think about, where are the resources in terms of after school programs? Because immediately when you said something about the Chicago school district saying, well, we're going to provide you with resources, put them in after school programs. Open your buildings up so these kids have somewhere to be, and resource these buildings with people who know how to connect with those kids. I know in Chicago,
they gave resources to the mom. That's what I was referring to. Like, I think they bought her like a car so they don't have to walk anymore, like stuff like that, which they very much deserve. But to your point, there are still additional ways. And I know the mayor, Brandon Johnson, has been, speaking about that. He just did an interview with, who was the rapper, Vic Mensa, that's from Chicago? Yep. And Vic he does Mensa, like the little orange tree thing in his backyard. So he was talking with the mayor, and he mentioned when it comes to education, the investments that he's made under his administration, because they got millions of dollars taken away by the Trump administration because of static and politics and all the things. So that's going on between them.
Yeah. And I think that's a bigger conversation and maybe primary topic at some point. In a season, it's not going to be this season, but in a season where we talk about like after school programs, out of school time programming, and why it's critical to continue to resource and fund things like that. Because these kids, if they don't have anywhere to go, and I talk about this all the time, if they don't have anywhere to go, they're going to find somewhere to go.
Yeah. And we got to provide more wraparound services.
Yep. And they walk past the block every day. Right. In Nipsey's book or his memoir about his story, he talks about he had to align with the Rolling 60s because organizations like the Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, etc., did not serve his community. So he had to align with either the Bloods or the Crips just to get through neighborhoods and to feel safe, right? Which means that he had to fight. He had to become the gang member, Nipsey Hussle, just to exist in his community. And those boys, those young kids, I don't know if it was any girls in that group, but it's the same way, right? They're only engaging in the way that their environment has taught them to engage. And there are adults that is codifying that behavior. There is no light them up in the comments. If I was one of the parents, not only would I light you up, but I'm letting the comments light you up too. And think it's a game. Matter of fact, guided participation, right? I'll tell a story real quick. When I was in the ATS room, alternative to suspension room, remember the
Be the only time we'll reference that. Yeah.
Never mind. One of my boys, basically, like, he was mad because he was in the room, and I was proximate to the room, but I wasn't the like ATS TA, teaching assistant. For those who don't know what that is, I was a community partner, but that was where my office was. So he was mad. I have a relationship with him, and this is also hip hop as pedagogy. But, he was mad at me because, I got him and I told him, man, sit down, get out my face, sit down, you in trouble, just sit there. I don't tell him not to talk or anything like that, because I don't think this is not jail. And if you want to talk, you're human, you can talk. But he was mad at this point, and he was mad at me in particular because I had to like be stern. So he calls me a crackhead, right? And back in the day, we used to always call people crackheads, and you know what I'm saying? Or you a crack baby and all that stuff. So he called me a crackhead and called himself telling me off. And I told him, I said, well, the only way that you would know that I'm a crackhead or look like a crackhead is if you have one in your family. And the way that this man goes, because he didn't know that I was going to guide him in that participation. Oh, I'm him. I'm one of them. So think it's a game.
Time that day.
Yeah, I got time today. I'm sitting here. We the only ones in this room because everybody else is out doing work. I got time today. But people don't see. Some people would see that as you just fractured a relationship. For me, we got closer. He never tried that again. You thought this was sweet around here? I got something for you. But
he saw, let me get back in my lane.
Yeah, let me get back in my lane. Because we come from the drilling era. We used to tell people mamas. We used to have mama jokes for days and stuff like that, right? We did this for fun. So why you trying to call me a crackhead because you think that's going to get under my skin? How do you know what a crackhead looks like?
Try again.
Right. So I say all that to say, but in his community, right, the community that he comes from and what has socialized him, he learned that is a way to which you engage when you don't like somebody or you feel a certain way about somebody. And when I met him where he was at, we bonded a little bit, right? Because he would always bring it back up. But at the same time, he's seen that I also spoke his language. Because I seen that when he was calling me a crackhead, he's just frustrated. He doesn't actually think that I'm a crackhead. And I didn't know people.
I don't even know what a crackhead is, probably.
Correct. He got a lot of life. He got a life. And he was only in fourth grade, by the third grade at that point. But he got a lot of life. Yeah. So he knew. But note people, I didn't call him a crackhead or anybody in his family. I said, you must have a crackhead in your family if you think that you know what a crackhead look like.
You just took an educated guess. That's all.
Yeah, that's it. So as this education podcast comes to a close, understand that I did not tell you to call your kids crackheads. I told you to be witty enough to play with words. So you meet them where they're at without them saying that, oh, Mr. Devin or Mr. England just called me a crackhead and now I don't got a job because I really did call him a crackhead, right? I said, you must have crackheads in your family to identify what a crackhead looks like. Proximity, people, proximity. Know how to play the game.
See what you did there.
Yeah. Wordplay, which is again hip hop pedagogy. You see how I'm like tying all this together? Wordplay. We got to understand how words interact and tie in with each other. But to that point, I think, to end the research, the recess topic, those kids need help. Those kids, when I say help, I mean like support, resources. And those kids are only reflecting what their environments are allowing them to be. And I blame that behavior on the parents and less on the kids. Obviously, the kids take responsibility for what they did, but they're only doing what they know to do and what they've been taught. So if we don't teach our kids how to express themselves outside of curse words, then guess what they're going to do when they're feeling a type of way? They're going to go and they're going to express themselves as they see you, parents, expressing yourself when you're frustrated. If you hit on them and whoop them because you're frustrated, guess what happens when they're frustrated at school? They're going to whip on somebody.
Yeah, the cycle just keeps repeating itself.
It is a cycle. So I do know that the mom, I'm saying that like I'm a reporter. I just talked to her yesterday on the phone. I did see that the mom is suing the parents of those kids.
She should.
As she should. That's one of those things was like, listen, now I don't know what you're going to get, but yeah, please sue them. Class action. Everybody needs to eat, right? And everybody needs to take. But I think that's also a conversation which actually segues into our lesson next week, which is parents as power brokers. And these parents need support as well. And one of the things in my contract, parent liberation work, is parents also need to learn how to parent. Because parenting is not a inherent skill. It is a learned skill. It is learned behavior.
We don't get an instruction manual with it. We don't know what we're doing.
Manual. So like as me and Cam is engaging with this content, it's because we raise other people's kids for a living.
Well, I raised mine too.
And you raised your own, right? But before you had your, well, you know, it was like,
I know what you mean.
knew, like it actually do the process of you raising your own, which there is unique challenges to raise your own.
Simultaneously.
You're also learning how to navigate with a kid who you really have no power over, right? You have no control over this kid, but you have to exude not power over them, but influence, right? Which can turn to power and things of that nature. So we will talk more to the parents and how you can be power brokers in our next lesson. I think this has been a productive conversation as we close out. Cam, what you got anything that you're working on by any dreams necessary that you want to share with the people?
Well, by the time that this episode airs, we will definitely be in full-blown promotion for our next event or our annual event. So the 2026 Rise Teen Summit event is underway. The planning is. So we have established and locked in the date, which will be September 12th, 2026. And we will also be partnering with the local Boys and Girls Club here in Rockford, Illinois. So we are so excited to be able to make this a bigger and better and greater experience. So we will be doing quarterly community engagement sessions as well, leading up to the big Teen Summit event. So that way we can include more community leaders, more parents and guardians in the conversation and just help with giving them the resources and tools that we just talked about a few moments ago to help cultivate their child's educational experience. So just stay tuned because there'll be a lot more information that will be coming out over the course of time leading up to the event that will encourage, just people from our community, or if folks want to travel and come and support, come slide, come pull up. We're a good time. But yeah, that's what we're working on right now. And I'm super excited.
It's lit. I was there. I presented this year. We was talking about how my hair wasn't retwisted. So this year, next year, I'm going to have to retwist my hair because, as y'all can see, Cam noticed, and Cam don't like unretwisted hair.
I never said
untwisted
that.
Hair.
Never said that. We just put our best foot forward. And,
untwisted dev hair at Cam events, at Cam functions. She don't like that. So I will not do that again. I apologize, Kamski. Okay? I apologize.
I guess I'll accept it.
It was a time. And please show up. Please pop up to the Rise Teen Summit because it's going to be bigger and better this year. Well, yeah, this year, because when this release is going to be 2026. It's going to be bigger and better this year. And, this is where the work happens. And we want to make sure that we're positioning our youth to be, the next leaders of our communities, the next aldermen and mayors and presidents and things of that nature, because we are seeing CEOs, entrepreneurs, all of that stuff. So pull up. And then my announcement, I already announced it, but South by Southwest, April, I think it's 9th through the 12th is the EDU conference. And I do have a schedule, but I'll probably pop in on on the screen somewhere. But they just sent the schedule out, so I know which day I'll be presenting. But if you can go to Austin, Texas and pull up and show out, please do so. But with that, I'm Dev, and this has been a great episode, a great conversation. We look forward to seeing you next class, and I'm gonna have Cam close us out.
Yep, and this is Cam. Appreciate y'all for spending time with us and partaking in this conversation. Class has been dismissed and your syllabus has been officially remixed.